Yeah, Mark, that's right. There's still a decent-sized crowd out here, but it's gotten smaller in the last hour. But earlier today, we saw hundreds of high schoolers who came out here who say these new immigration policies are emotional for them. Hundreds of people seen outside City Hall protesting a wide range of President Trump's new federal policies. Concerns over deportation is what high schooler Lynette Suarez says brought her here today.
Stick up for my people because they're living their life in fear. They're hiding. They're not going to work. They're not making money to provide because of their fear right now. And that's just not right.
These students have been protesting all week. Flags representing El Salvador and Mexico seen lining Spring Street. Yesterday, LA City Council member Hugo Soto Martinez introduced 5 proposals aimed to strengthen immigration protections locally.
Everybody, we all come here for a better life. We all come here to make opportunities for our kids, for ourselves.
Since taking office, Trump has attempted to end birthright citizenship. He closed the CBP One app, which allows migrants to schedule asylum appointments at ports of entry. And more than 300,000 Venezuelans with U.S. work permits are losing protections in April.
Our parents go to work, we're scared. Our parents don't answer one phone call, we're scared. It's terrifying what's happening out here.
But it's not just immigration that brought protesters to City Hall. Ashley Brady with the Feminist Uprising nonprofit says she's here to support trans rights and legislation.
The hate that is coming out for the trans community is appalling and disgusting, and I think we really need to stand as allies. We need to stand there for them and say that enough is enough.
Boy, I gotta tell you guys, I think it is safe to say that we are in the midst of a full-blown cultural shift in this country. Okay, what is happening is that you now have a vast majority of the American people that align with the conservative movement, that align with the Republican Party. Okay, this country is finally becoming the country of common sense once again. Okay, and what you're saying is that Democrats, liberals, leftists, progressives, they're losing their minds over this. Okay, in fact, they have now staged nationwide protests in every state, allegedly in every state. There are mass protests of upset leftists over the Trump administration and some of his executive orders and the policies that he is implementing that the American people agree with, by the way.
Yeah, Mark, that's right. There's still a decent-sized crowd out here, but it's gotten smaller in the last hour. But earlier today,
country of common sense once again. Okay, and what you're saying is that
my whole thing with these protests is these protests are funded. These protests are funded. And if you pay attention, this might seem like something that's just small and doesn't matter. Where are they getting all these flags from? Because last time I checked, you just can't go into your local Walmart, Dollar General, gas station and get some type of Mexican flag, a Mexico flag, or you really can't even find an American flag, which is a bunch of crap. There should be American flags all over the place, free. But by the fact that we're seeing these flags and they're being waved so proudly, tells me that this mess is funded. Funded by who? Oh, I'll tell you. And this is an ongoing thing. It's funded by communists. Communists, they've been doing this at least, it's probably before, at least since the 1960s. They've been doing this thing to destabilize a country. Obviously, a country as great as the United States, the greatest country basically by any measure on the planet, the youngest country on the planet, the one country that will allow everyday normal people to excel. But that's the thing, the biggest red flag is where y'all getting all these flags from. Are y'all going down to Mexico and go to your flag store and buying these flags? So that just tells me it's being funded by Communist Party, Democrats.
That Democrats, liberals, leftists, progressives, they're losing their minds over this, okay? In fact, they have now staged nationwide protests in every state, allegedly in every state. There are mass protests of upset leftists over the Trump administration and some of his executive orders and the policies that he is implementing that the American people agree with, by the way. Take a look.
And the first mass national protests against his administration and policies took place in Nebraska and every other state yesterday. Thousands joined the so-called 50 states, 50 protests marches, dozens showing up at the state capitol in Lincoln, among other capital cities, calling out Trump's policies on human rights, immigration, even his choice of advisors like Elon Musk. Sherelle Hubbard has more.
Protesters across the nation took to the streets and to the steps of their state capitals Wednesday. They showed up to oppose the policies of President Donald Trump. Since taking office 2 weeks ago, he signed a litany of controversial executive orders, scaling up mass deportations of undocumented migrants, attempting to end birthright citizenship, and banning diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the federal government.
Because they want you to hate me and they want me to hate you. I hate my heart. The only thing I hate is fascism.
We were protesting Project 2025 as well as the policies that come from that.
Protesters showed up with signs like "Deport Elon" and "Stop the Oligarchy" to express their discontent. The marches were organized by the 50501 movement. The group says its key concerns are the eroding of civil liberties, dividing of communities, and oppressive policies.
All of our elected officials in Iowa, I implore you to respect the oath you took to defend our Constitution and go take some action against this administration.
I'm Sherelle Hubbard reporting.
Yeah, so you see, Nate heard that. Now, I want you guys to pay special attention to these protests. And the reason why is because those people that are participating in those protests are the last of the Democrat Party supporters left in this country, right? That's it. Okay, those are all the people that support the Democrats at this point, right? That's all they got left, which is not much. So with that being said, the latest executive order that they are upset about is President Trump's executive order to essentially ban transgender athletes from women's sports. And lo and behold, you also have the NCAA. They're also following along President Trump, and they are now banning transgender women from women's sports as well. Take a look.
Well, President Trump signed an executive order today barring biological males from competing in women's sports as transgender athletes. As Mike Emanuel reports, the order reverses a Biden administration.
As far as a photo op, it doesn't get any better than this. It doesn't get any better than this. This should not even be, he shouldn't even have to do this. In what world does biological man, why should I even have to say that? A biological man competing against women in sports. Even the most mediocre biological man. I can go train 5-6 months in any sport that a woman competes in. And I can kick her ass in that sport that she's been doing for 10, 12, 15 years. Because it's physical. Why would he even have to sign some type of executive order? Again, as I say all these things, I understand what's going on. But there's people that really believe in their deluded, demented mind that if somebody say they're a woman, they're a woman. So all you gotta do is say it, and so it shall be.
Interpretation of Title IX, which favored transgender rights.
Great going, everybody.
President Trump signing an executive order banning transgender athletes from participating in women's and girls' school sports.
And we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up, injure, and cheat our women and our girls. From now on, women's sports will be only for women.
Wednesday's order redefines Title IX, the civil rights law outlawing sex discrimination in federally funded educational programs.
For some reason, people think that trans women and intersex people have an advantage in sport, when in actual fact there is no evidence for that.
Mr. Trump's latest move landing on National Girls and Women in Sports Day.
Most Americans are with us in saying that women's sports should be reserved for women, biological women.
But some advocates wonder why the spotlight is on a population that is so rare.
Why is this an issue of such concern when the group being targeted is so disappearingly small?
Thanks so much for being with us. I wonder what your reaction is to Trump signing this executive order. How do you weigh the impact that this would have on athletes?
We knew that this was coming. This was a campaign promise that the Republicans put a lot of money into in the lead up to the presidential election, and has been a pillar of their party for the last several years. So it's not a surprise.
What? I mean, why they gotta do the most? Transgender, I assume, that this is a biological woman that took all type of medications and such. What's going on with the mustache? Why we gotta do that? I don't mean to. These people have mental illness, right? And the sad thing is, people that I would assume that don't have mental illness, and mental illness is nothing. It's nothing to laugh at. Go get therapy. I did and I do. Therapy is needed, is very important. But look, why the mustache like this?
Surprised that this is coming today. It's disappointing, though, that this is happening on National Women and Girls in Sports Day and taking away from some of the actual real things that people can do to support women and girls in sports.
So when you hear people say, this is how it should be, trans athletes have a competitive advantage over non-trans athletes, what do you say to them?
There's no evidence that trans athletes have an advantage over anyone else in sports. Trans athletes play.
There is evidence. Leah Thomas, a 6'4" man swimmer that was mediocre competing against the men, went over to, now he's a woman, trans woman, can't remember his male name, went over to the woman and set and broke and shattered and obliterated every female swimming record ever. You said there's no evidence? How much evidence do you need? You only need one piece of evidence. That is a glaring piece of evidence.
Play sports for the same reasons as anybody else, for our love of the game, to be a part of a team, to challenge ourselves, and most of all, for the youth level, to have fun. And every young person deserves that opportunity to be their authentic self and to play the sports that they love without compromising any part of who they are.
I'm curious about that, Chris, because you say that there's no evidence that there's a competitive advantage, but we've heard from parents who've had a different experience. They've argued that there is irrefutable evidence, irrefutable differences in physiology between the sexes, that hormone therapies don't sufficiently level the playing field. Do you get where they're coming from?
We have to look at what we're talking about here. And if we're talking about youth sports is part of our educational system. And as part of our educational system, young people learn values such as discipline, hard work, leadership, teamwork, communication skills, and so much more from their participation in sports. We know that each body is different, every person is different, and that even amongst cisgender kids that are not transgender, there are differences in their strength, their speed, their ability, their natural ability, as well as differences in their access to good coaching, to great equipment, to things like rest and recovery or proper nutrition, all of the things that go into making someone be a good athlete. And I think that people don't really consider those other factors. The laser focus has been on hormone therapy or testosterone. And when we're talking about young kids, which is part of what this executive order will be applying to, I think we really missed the mark when we're focusing so heavily on biology and not on the lived experience of kids who are just trying to have the educational experience as their peers.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. This is the modern day Democrat Party, folks. This is the modern day left. There's no evidence that transgender athletes, particularly biological males, have an advantage over biological females when it comes to sports. No evidence whatsoever. It's just not worth debating or arguing with these individuals at this point, right? You can't reason with these people, okay? It's just like the race hustlers. You can't reason with them. No matter what, they're going to see themselves as victims, right? It doesn't matter if they are generally successful people. No, I'm a victim. I'm being held back because of the white man, because of a black woman. Same thing here, right? You cannot reason with people who refuse to acknowledge basic facts about biology, okay? There are differences between biological boys and biological girls when it comes to their physiology. We're talking about physical characteristics, speed, strength, bone density, height, muscle mass. All of these things matter when it comes to sports. But the good thing is that we've already won the debate.
I think these numbers are really illuminating on this topic because I just think there's such a clear trend among the American public. So transgender female athletes in women's sports, only 18% of the country says that they should be, in fact, allowed to participate in women's sports. Compare this to the opposition. I mean, my goodness gracious, 79%. You rarely get 79% of the country to agree on anything, but they do, in fact, agree on the idea of opposing transgender female athletes in women's sports. But it's not just the here and now, Laura. It's not just the here and now. What we're actually seeing is a trend on this particular issue, and it's going in the direction of opposition. So take a look here. Okay, transgendered female athletes, and amongst those Americans who oppose them in women's sports. Back in 2021, it was 62%. A majority, but, you know, not anywhere close to a ginormous majority, right? A clear majority, but not a ginormous majority. But then again, you look here in 2025, you see it at 79%. So it's not just that the majority of Americans are opposed to transgender female athletes in women's sports. It's that the opposition has become considerably larger in just the last 4 years.
How does this break down across party lines?
Yeah, so, you know, when you get 79% of Americans to agree on anything, in this case, opposition to transgender female athletes in women's sports, you got to believe that it's the majority across all parties, and that's, in fact, what we see. So transgender female athletes, again, opposing them in women's sports. You get 67% of Democrats, so 2/3 there. You get 64% of independents, so you get about 2/3 there. And then look at this, near uniformity among Republicans, 94% of Republicans.
That 94% is called normal. That's all that is. That's all that is. And I'm looking at the 67 and the 64% among these other two groups. That should be 94. That should be 94, but those other two groups, for the most part, have a narrative. And they have people that are paying them money that they answer to. So that's why that number is not overwhelming. All these numbers should be 100%. 67%, 64%. Y'all, willing ignorance, lies, which is the best way to put that. You know, all y'all know, everybody knows, men and women are built differently for a different reason. It's the plan of the Creator. Men were built to work. Men were built to work. Women were built to bring life. That's why their body is set up that way. And their body changes to readily accommodate bringing a life into this world. That's why they're emotional. That's why they're built to be nurturers. Men are not built like that. Our body's not built to bring life into this world. We provide the spark of life. It's pretty much, there you go. Now bring it into life, and we just gonna continue. You coddle the baby, you do all that type of stuff. I'm going to work. See you at 5:30 when I get done. I'll be back. The woman, meanwhile, is supposed to. Any little whimper or anything that has to do with the baby, she's built to react to it. And they're good at it. They're great at it. That's what they're supposed to do. Baby crying. A woman to think there's something wrong with the baby. A man to be like, let the baby cry. If anything, it's going to help the baby's lungs. The baby will be all right. You done changed the baby. You done fed the baby. We know the baby not sick. Let the baby cry for a minute. There ain't nothing wrong. No, the women will go over there and be like, oh, come here, boo boo. Hold the baby. Do all this type of stuff. We're built different is the point.
In opposition. You rarely get 67% of Democrats and 94% of Republicans to agree on anything, but they do on this particular issue. But it's not just that Republicans are in an opposition, it's the strength of that opposition. Okay, Republicans who strongly want to ban transgender female athletes from women's sports. Get this, it's 84% who strongly want to ban them. And that is actually larger than the amount of Republicans who strongly want to deport all immigrants in America who are here illegally. So that just gives you an understanding of how strong the opposition is among Republicans. It is really strong when it comes to banning transgender female athletes from women's sports, Laura.
Wow. There are very few issues in this country where 80% of the American people all agree, right? Again, there are not many issues, but this is one of those issues, okay? And despite all this, Democrats are doubling and tripling down on, hey, let's align with this, right? Let's be on board with something that 80% of the American people are against. So it's not just the NCAA that has decided to ban this, but President Trump's executive order also has conversations going on in other parts of the world, like, for example, the UK, about whether or not they should follow suit. Take a look.
Mara, I'll start with you. Should we do the same as Donald Trump, in your view?
Yes, definitely. The government's position currently is that
oh my, I don't want to talk about nobody's appearance, but look at these two things. Oh my, what the? Oh. Okay, I'm done. Just, oh my.
the decision on eligibility for the female category should rest with national sport governing bodies. This has been going on for several years. I'm afraid it's an absolute failure. There are many sports which still allow men into the female category. There are some sports like my own athletics which have banned men from the female category, but men are still competing in licensed events, breaking the rules. So it's not working. Keir Starmer and Secretary of State for Sport Lisa Nandy need to show some leadership and get men out of women's sport at all levels. This isn't just about elite level. It's all ages, all abilities, all levels, and of course it applies to girls as well.
Okay, Joanne, same question to you. Why don't we follow suit now and just get blokes out of women's sport?
I completely agree. Men shouldn't be in women's sport. We're not discussing men in women's sport here. We're discussing trans women, trans men in sport. And I think Trump's statement, what did he say? Cheat, harm, and injure. That's not the motivation behind any trans person to cheat, harm, or injure anybody. And clearly, the research here.
Cheat, harm, injure. What the? And into women's sports. I did not expect that this person's voice would be.
Here shows that trans women who've been on blockers, who've had their testosterone suppressed for 1 to 3 years, lose any physical ability, such as muscle mass or aerobic capacity, to the point where after 3 years, there's no significant difference in ability.
Mara, do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I'm afraid that's a complete lie. There is a mountain of evidence showing, there are about 20 odd papers now showing that males retain at least some of their male advantage even after surgery, testosterone suppression, etc.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure why is it that the people who believe that it's okay for biological men to compete against women in sports continue to say there is no evidence that biological men have a competitive advantage over biological women, because a vast majority of people don't need to read a scientific paper to know that in fact is not true.
I don't have an advantage over a woman. Oh my gosh. Are we being serious here? Is this real? I am bigger, taller, faster, stronger than a woman, but there's no evidence that I have an advantage over her. Man, look. You coming into the arena. Now, there's a such thing as co-ed sports. We have that. But when it's a women's field category or whatever, and a men's category or whatever, I expect that they're going to be all women biologically, all men biologically competing. Now, people say life isn't fair. I think life is very fair because we all have the same basic things. We breathe, and because of modern innovations, we all got water and all this stuff. So I think life is fair. Now, in sports, there's rules to make the process of competition to seem as fair as possible, which is no one has an advantage. No one. Now, the best athletes are always gonna win. When you're talking about this particular issue, a man has a physical advantage over a woman every single time. Even the most mediocre, little lanky, little small man will have an advantage over a woman. Doesn't mean he's gonna win every time. That's not what that means. But that does mean he has an advantage.
Right? All you need to do is use your common sense. We have seen trans athletes dominate women's sports. Leah Thomas. Okay, we've seen a ton of this stuff happening across the country, across the world. And for the activists in the Democrat Party to continue to deny this, it just further erodes their credibility. That's all it does. It just makes them less and less and less credible to the American people. So
So yeah, that's gonna be the end of this video. If you're on Facebook, like the video, share the video, comment on the video over on YouTube. Missing for 5000. Peace.